What's up, good people? It's your boy, Leroy McKenzie Jr., coming to you for the Authors Showcase brought to you by brought to you by J&F Enterprises and the National Black Community News newspaper. Y'all know how we do. We are bringing you some of the nation's just phenomenal writers, authors, those that are in the publishing and writing industry, just bring you some of their works, some of their projects, and all of those great things that they have going on. So today is going to be no different than any of the others. And, and today we have with us, and you'll meet this great gentleman in a couple of minutes, because we're going to let him come and tell you a little bit about himself. And this is none other than Mr. Corey Johnson. And we'll talk a little bit about his book. We'll talk a little bit about his writing experience. We'll talk about what it is to be courageous, which is the title of his book that he has out now. So we're going to dig into that, and we'll have that conversation in just a minute. But the National Black Community News is actually where you can go to go to the website www.tnbun.com to subscribe. You can actually check out the other issues that we have. The latest issue with Brother Corey Johnson in the showcase there with his book and his contact information. And then you can go over to, of course, our YouTube channel, where you'll be able to see interviews with Corey Johnson and a number of other authors that are part of the showcase, talking about their mission, their message, their motivation, the movements that they have, all those great things that these authors have going on and that are doing. So with that being said, I want to jump right into our conversation and introduce everyone to Mr. Corey Johnson. Now, Corey, the way that I usually start this off is by having our guests introduce themselves and tell people just a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into the conversation about your writing and about the book that you have out. How's that sound?
Oh, that's cool. First of all, I want to thank you, Mr. McKenzie, for having me on as a guest. My name is Corey J. Johnson. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I am a published writer, author. I have 3 books out, which is a 3-part series titled PI Chronicles, and that series talks about my life as a young Black man coming from Baltimore and joined the Marine Corps and traveled around the world. And my 4th book is a book titled Courageous, and it's about my brother. His name is Avon Johnson. In the streets, they called him Flubber. And he was a notorious guy in the streets of Baltimore. And, you know, he went through the perils, ups and downs, and a lot of different things in his life. And he eventually fell victim to drug abuse. He became a drug addict. And during his recovery of his addiction, he decided that he would use his influence in Baltimore and his reputation of being, you know, a real serious guy, you know, to help people get clean. And because of his reputation, he was able to sponsor and help a lot of people get clean and get off the streets. And to this day, I mean, he's still like a legend in West Baltimore that people still talk about. So that's what caused me to write the book, Courageous, which is the primary project that I promote. And I turned Courageous from a book into a play, like a monologue play, with just one person portraying the main character, Flubber, and just going through his life and talking about different things. And then I filmed the play and edited and put it together, and now I'm submitted to film festivals so that we can see if you know, possibly we could get it on a network or get it picked up and turned into a full, you know, film production project.
Wow, and that's good. That's great. Thanks for telling us a little bit about you. Now, can you tell me what got you started right now? I know you talked about this project being the first one. Is that what prompted you to want to go from saying, "Hey, I have this," you know, kind of not be, were you always a writer, or was this what what you wanted to do, the story about your brother? Was that what prompted you to want to become a writer?
Well, I was always a creative person.
Okay.
I always loved music and art and dancing and sports, and so I always been a creator, I would say. But I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago, I wanted to write something about myself. That's how PI Chronicles came. One of my Marine best friends was telling me, you should write about the things that we went through in the Philippines, because as Marines, any service member traveling around the world will tell you that they consider their life to be elite or different than the average person, because we get to do things that most people don't get to do. So we usually share those stories amongst ourselves, but we was like, we should get that story out there to some other folks. And me being a young black man from Baltimore, I know it's a lot of military, personnel who grew up in Baltimore, but they may not have come from exactly the neighborhoods that I come from or experienced the things that I experienced. So I wanted to share my story with people who look like me, who may not, know the stories of traveling around the world to a third world country, or being in a place like the Philippines, or some of the other places that I visited. So I thought it was an interesting story. And once I gave the manuscript for PI Chronicles to um, a relative of mine to help me edit the book, and she was like, initially the book it was just one whole book. It wasn't broken into three parts. It was just one whole book. She said,
Okay.
you got enough content that if we do this right, we edit it right, we can break this into three books. So instead of coming out as a new author with one book, you'll have three books already to go. So that's what we did. We broke that down, edited it, and turned it into three books. So while we were going through the editing process, another friend of mine who knew I was writing, he said he knew my brother. And he said, your brother got a compelling story. That's what you should write about. If you want to write a good story, you should write about Flubber. And Flubber was much older than me, so I didn't really know his story.
Okay.
So I'm like, he's just my brother. Like, what did he do that was so compelling? And the guy started telling me stories about things that my brother did, and he started introducing me to people. So they started telling me more stories. So I started, doing more research on my own. I said, this sounds, intriguing. Now you got me interested. What else can I find out? And I started talking to family members, and it just went on from there. And people were just telling me all these stories about my brother, and I started to see the vision that it was a great story. And while I was putting the manuscript together for publishing my first book series, I started writing Courageous, and
Okay.
it just went from there.
Wow. Now that's different, um, and that's great that your editor suggested to you about, hey, we can, instead of kind of compacting it into one book, how they told you that, hey, you could actually get a series out of it. And a lot of authors don't understand sometimes that if you do have enough content, that you can build a series which actually can assist and can help an author in writing, as opposed to having just one book. Now you go from having one book to having a series, or three, four, possibly five books and everything like that in a series. Now, was that something that, obviously it looks like you were open to that? And now, if she hadn't mentioned that, would that have been something that you had thought about, or would it just been, hey, I got the one book and I'm done?
Yeah, I mean, initially, I've never written anything like that, that many words before. So
Okay.
I was satisfied with the one book. It was a long, drawn out story, but I thought it all worked well, as it was as one book.
Mm.
So I creatively, once we broke it into three books, I had to try to be creative and go back and make each book connected, because we would separate the story so that, we had to take content out to make everything, satisfy and flow well with book one, and then book two and book three. So what I did was I would put like a cliffhanger at the end of book one, so that it would make you want to buy book 2 so
Right.
that you can know the rest of the story. And I did the same thing with book 2. And I actually kind of did the same thing with book 3, so that the way I did it was book 1 is actually the end of the story,
Oh wow.
but
Okay.
book 3 connects it together. So when you read all 3, you kind of get it. They all go together, but it doesn't matter which book you start off with. You're going to come to the same, conclusion that they all kind of go together.
Oh wow. Well, with you saying it, you kind of got me thinking about what's his name? I can't remember. He's the creator of Star Wars. Is it John Lucas? I know his last name is Lucas. Can't remember his name. His first
I
name.
think it's, yeah, definitely Lucas, yeah.
But the way that he wrote Star Wars, he started with I don't want to say it was even the end. He kind of started in the middle of his story with Luke Skywalker and everything. And then he took everybody he kind of wrote the story really he went forward and then he went all the way back to the beginning to show you kind of how it got to that Star Wars actual story and everything like that. So that's you made me think about that when you just started talking about how you develop how you're developing the series that you're writing and everything like that. And I think that's, like you said, it's very creative because it keeps people engaged because they'll want to know, wow, hey, how did he do this, or how did this turn out that way? I got to go back. I got to read all of those books in order to be
Right.
able to in order to be able to understand the whole picture. So I think that's one. I think that's a great strategy. But two, I think that's great for readers who will actually read the book. So you said Courageous is the first one in the series to be coming out?
No, PR Chronicles is a 3-part series, and Courageous is a separate book.
Oh, okay,
So,
okay, okay.
so it's
Okay.
4 books total, but PR Chronicles is a 3-part series, and Courageous is the book that I primarily promote.
Oh, okay, got you. Now, I'm gonna ask you this: what has been the toughest aspect of writing for you?
The toughest aspect, I would say, if I had the chance, I would go back and I would have done more schooling and education in writing, like journalism or something like that. I can't hear you. I think the
No, go
audio.
ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would have gone back to school and taken some courses in writing, like literature or American literature or journalism or something like that. So I would have had more experience in being an experienced writer. Then I probably wouldn't have had to go to somebody to help me edit, because I think a lot of times I think we all have a story to tell. It's just a matter of, can you put it out there and make it readable and enjoyable and something that people will want to read. So that's where a professional writer or editor comes into place. And I didn't have that experience, so I had to go to somebody else to get that make sure that the manuscript and the book was well presented. I didn't want to put it out there just a story and it be written poorly. So that was probably the hardest part for me. Editing is that's a job.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying editing, like being an editor, like to edit books and stuff. That's a difficult job.
Mm, got you. Now, now we talk about the toughest. Now, what's been the greatest part of being about writing that you've experienced as an author?
I mean, it's very rewarding to me. For one, it's relaxing. It's kind of therapeutic, to sit behind a laptop and write words, because I can create stories in my head all day long. But
Mhm.
to be able to pull those stories out of my mind and put them down in words, and then go back and read it, or have other people review my book and tell me how wonderful the book was, or how you know mostly for Courageous. If anybody reads Courageous and they come back and say, Courageous helped me in any way, because I try to tell people, if you think you're going through something difficult in life, it doesn't, Abraham Fleming went through drug addiction, but you could be going through something totally different that you can't overcome, you can't figure out how to overcome. It's difficult. situation. So if you read Courageous and it helped you in any way to find the courage to overcome what it is that you're going through, that's very rewarding to me. So that's been the greatest part for me. Sharing a story with everybody.
Now, can you talk a little bit just about what give just a brief overview of what Courageous is about, what that particular book is about.
So Courageous is again, it's about my brother. His name is Rayvon Johnson. He was, a notorious guy in the streets of Baltimore. I would say around, the 60s, 70s, early 80s. Well-known guy, well liked, well loved, but at the same time, he had a few, enemies. But he was a guy back in the day they would call a go for bag type of dude. When you live in that lifestyle out in the streets, doing the things that he would do, everybody not gonna love you. So, but he feared nobody. He had the courage to go out there and do whatever he wanted to do unapologetically. You know, but I also call it courageous because when he came upon his drug addiction, a lot of people can't overcome that addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And Flubber was able to fight his addiction and go through the necessary steps and do the things he needed to do in recovery to overcome his addiction, but not just overcoming his own addiction. He had, the heart and the passion for other people, the love for other people that he wanted to use his life as an example to tell his story to people in their meetings to help them overcome their addiction.
Mm. Wow, wow, and that's a powerful story. Now, what's the message that you want the reader to come away with from reading Courageous?
Well, once we turn Courageous into a play, it's a famous line in the play where Flubber says, "Stop letting people tell you what you can and cannot do."
Mm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's a defined moment in the play where he's telling people you know his story personally, and it gets kind of emotional. He kind of breaks down in tears because he's so passionate about what he's saying, and he's telling the audience that's listening, use my life as an example,
Mm-hmm.
and stop letting people tell you what you can and cannot do. And that's what I want people to get from the story. That you got to find the courage within yourself to overcome whatever it is you're going through. If you're in an abusive relationship, if you're in a dead end job where your supervisor, your managers don't respect you, whatever the case may be, it can be drugs, it can be anything. Don't let people tell you what you can and cannot do. It's really up to you. You gotta have the courage to figure it out and overcome it on your own.
Wow, and I like that. And the reason I'm smiling is because you make me think about the movie Harriet. I don't know if you watched the movie Harriet, about Harriet Tubman.
I haven't seen it yet. It's definitely on my list. So I want to see that.
Yeah, take if you get an opportunity, it's a great movie to watch. But there's a line in the movie. She's already made her first trip from the Eastern Shore here in Maryland up to Pennsylvania. She had gone, she had made it there. She wants to go back to bring others, and to bring her family up north so that they can be free. And the gentleman that is a part of that Underground Railroad system, and is the one that she was her initial contact. He's telling her, Harriet, you can't go back. You made it, luckily. You made it by luck, because she traveled like 100 miles walking without knowing where to go, and kind of guided by the different spots that she had to meet certain people in the Underground Railroad. So it wasn't easy by any stretch of the imagination. But he's telling her, Harriet, you can't do it. It's going to be difficult. You can't read. You have to be able to read. It's a complicated system that we have set up here. And she gets adamant. She's like, you don't tell me what I can and can't do. She had that, and just what you were talking about, she had that passion within her that wasn't going to allow anybody to tell her what she couldn't accomplish and what she wasn't going to be able to do. She was willing to die and go back to bring those others to freedom, and she wasn't going to let anybody deter her from from being able to do that. And the guy he kind of understands that he's not gonna be able to stop it. She gonna do it either way. She gonna do it anyway.
Right,
But
right.
but the point of the matter, she wasn't going to, like you were saying, she wasn't going to allow anybody to tell her what she couldn't do. This was her mission. This was what she was purposed to do, and she was gonna do it at all costs. Like you want people to get out of coming from this, what your brother says, and that is so true. That a lot of people don't, they get deterred if somebody tells them, "Oh, you can't do this," or "Oh, you can't do that," and not believing in them. But you have to push through those negative people, those negative obstacles that, of course, that are going to try and get in your way in order to be able to be who it is that you want to do. If you believe in if you believe in who you are and what your purpose to do, what you're trying to do, there should be no one that should be able to stop you. So I appreciate that message that you say that you want folks to come away with, from the book and everything like that. So I think that's great. Now, and you talked about the play. How has it been creating a talk, if you can talk a little bit about that, because you have some writers that want to, their books may be um, good enough to make into plays. What made you say, "Hey, I think that this could be made in a play," and then actually going through that process to be able to do it and everything like that? How did that happen, and how has that transition happened for you?
Well, from the moment I got into Courageous, as far as completing the book itself, I could envision that it was going to be some type of production.
Okay.
The story. Sometimes people can't get your vision from reading words. Some people say, um, I'm not a book reader.
Hmm.
Some people want audio books so that
Right.
somebody can read it to them. And some people just don't like, picking up a book and just, thumbing through the page and reading words. So I wanted to give people something visual that they could see. So I took portions of the story in the book and turned it into a monologue. I wanted to do a play with like a full cast,
Okay.
but I don't really have the experience to write a script and produce and direct, a play.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
took on what I thought I could handle, and I made it a monologue piece where the only person I really had to worry about is one person, the main character.
Right. Right.
And so if I was to put the production on myself, I could handle the responsibility of directing and producing one person on stage. But what happened was, once I got the script done, I submitted it to a few local um, theaters,
Hmm.
and the play was actually picked up by um, the world famous historic arena players in Baltimore.
Uh huh.
And a gentleman by the name of Donald Owens, who's a well-known play director and producer, he said, "Listen, I like this story. I got a guy that I think can play Flubber." And we auditioned the guy.
Hmm.
First audition, he never read the script or read the book, and he did what we call a dry read. He just read over a few pages,
Hmm.
and he had all of us floored. I mean, it was like he knew the story and he had already taken on the character.
Oh wow.
So Donald Owens said, "Listen, you know, we willing to produce this play and put it on." So he knows how to put a play together. So he worked with the guy and got him ready, and that's kind of like how we started.
Wow, that's awesome that you all found someone like that. And I mean, I don't know how. I'm quite sure that that's that's not the norm where you just you get somebody that comes in and can pull something off, right away like that. I think that's great. Now, um, how did you come up with the title Courageous? Where did that title come from for
It's interesting. So I was writing the book,
you?
and I pretty much had the bulk of the story done. Excuse me, and I wanted to come up with a title. So his name is Avon Johnson, but in the streets they call him Flubber. That was his nickname. That's what he was mostly known as. So I was just gonna name the book Flubber. and just
Okay.
leave it at that. I thought that was catchy, and it would people who read the story would get it, and people in Baltimore who knew him, would get it. But I let a family member read it, and I threw the title at them, and they said they wasn't feeling it.
Mm.
So I'm the type of person, I hear you out. It's my sister, close. She needs loving just as well as I did. So if she wasn't feeling it, then maybe I need to go back and reconsider. So I just started coming up with different words, taking different pieces of the story out and figuring out, excuse me, what would I want to call it.
Hmm.
So I wrote down like 3 or 4 different words, and I looked up the definition. I did some Google searches and stuff like that, and I did a Google search for. Someone had told me that they mentioned Flubber's name in. Do you remember the TV show called The Corner? It was a TV series about Baltimore, West Baltimore.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So the same person, David Simon and Ed Burns, who wrote The Corner, they wrote The Wire. And someone had told me that they mentioned Flubber's name in The
Mm.
Corner.
Okay,
So I did a
okay.
Google search for the book, The Corner, and using Flubber's name. And it came up in Google that several times in the book version of The Corner, they actually did mention Flubber's name. So one
Okay.
of the descriptions, as one of the characters was talking about who Flubber was, they used the term courageous. They said he had the courage to get up in front of people at NA meetings and tell his story. And that was one of the words that I had written down,
Okay.
courage. So I
Okay.
was like, this can't be, by mistake. I mean, David Simon is a great writer. Like, how could he use the same term that I'm thinking? So maybe I should title the book, Courageous. And
Oh
that's
wow.
that's kind of where it came from.
Oh wow. Wow. That's a great that's a great backstory. And one of the things that I think that authors sometimes overlook are two things when it comes to writing. One is the cover, the book cover, but then two are titles. Like you said, your sister was like, well, that title isn't kind of, it's catchy, but it's not catchy enough and everything like that. And she was thinking that there could be something more that would grab people and make them want to read the book. And that's, I know that's happened to me because I know that I'm an avid reader. But one of the things that caught me with one of the books that I'm reading in the middle of reading now is called Contagious, and
Contagious.
it came from I was watching an interview of Nipsey Hussle, and he mentions this book in his interview, and he talks about what the guy talks about in the book and everything like that. And I'm like, man, I'm like, okay, what is it? So I go to look up Google Contagious and pull up the book and everything like that and read about what the author talks about, and it caught my attention. It caught my attention, one, because of Nipsey mentioning it, but also the title of the book, Contagious. So I was just like, man, I gotta, I want to find out what this author's talking about in this book. Contagious is actually an interesting book because in the book the author talks about marketing and using certain tactics in order to be able to to market books, sell, or just businesses, being an entrepreneur and selling certain things, and what goes into making something catchy. He talked about, I think, and this is something that Nipsey used. He used he sold his Nipsey Hussle sold his CDs
Mm-hmm.
for $100. Now, I don't know too many people that's gonna spend $100 on a CD, but it was just it was so outrageous, and you just like, who in the world sells a CD for $100? But
Right.
he sold his CDs to, I think he sold like 3 cases. It was like he sold 100 CDs to Jay-Z
Yep.
for $100, and it was just, and there were several others that
Mm-hmm.
bought it too, and that was the premise. He used that premise from the book Contagious that he read and everything like that. And I was like, wow. So when he told the story, I was like, man, it's got to be something to that. So it made me want to read that book, and then the title itself kept me caught me too. So I understand what you're saying, where you go from thinking that your brother's nickname would be something catchy, which probably would have caught somebody, but having the book title Courageous, that definitely people have to be, well, let me find out what that means, why he's calling this book Courageous, and what would make this person that he's talking about courageous themselves and everything like that. So I think that's great. What do you think are three keys to writing such an impactful book? As such as a courageous. What are those? What would, if you can give me three things that would describe courageous, and you would say why somebody should read it? What would those kind of like three things be?
I mean, just to keep it simple, um, I would say that Courageous meets the criteria for what they call a linear story.
Mm,
Um, there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an ending. But what makes Courageous special, as far as the book itself, is um, I consider myself to be an author who, if you read anything that I write, I take you on a journey. You
mm,
know, the book is obviously written in text and words, but as you read the story, you can actually visualize, what it is I'm telling you in the story. I write, in pretty graphically, in detail, where you could read one chapter and it was almost like you was there when it happened. That's the type of writer I believe I am, and I've been told that, by many people. So the other thing I would say about Courageous is it's an honest story. It's true. It's real. It's gritty. It's a lot of people write what they call black urban tale type stories.
mm-hmm.
They shoot them up, bang bang, drugs and money. You know what I mean?
Right,
But this is
right.
a little bit more than that. I mean, Flubber's life definitely meet the criteria for a urban drama type of book. But I didn't want to glorify his life as a drug dealer. You know,
Okay.
I had to lay the context for you to understand that he did live that life, because if he didn't live that life truly, and then I just told you he overcame drugs, I mean, it wouldn't really be a moral to it. But for you to see what he actually accomplished and what he became at a certain point in his life, he was at the highest pinnacle of having all the money, wanted all the cars, and he was a flashy guy. He dressed, real fly. Um, but then he lost it all. So I had to lay that foundation for you to see that he was the man at one time. But what they call rock bottom, he lost it all in his addiction. So for him to overcome, again, being courageous, he didn't give up. He could have gave up when he lost it all and just dove into, just getting high and just forget about his life and just die like that. But he never gave up, and it's a real story. It's honest. I think it's some compassion in there. I've had family members who knew Flubber's story read the book and come back and tell me that it brought tears to their eyes.
Wow.
And some people, they knew Flubber personally. They knew what his story was, so they know what he went through, and they know what the ending is. But in reading the book, people will come back to me and say, "Man, at one point, I was rooting for Flubber. Like, come on, man, you can do it." And these are people that already knew his story. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? So I think that's what you'll get out of Flubber. A very detailed, graphic, honest story about redemption. He was a human being. He a lot of times people look at drug dealers and people who live that type of life as being mean or a monster, or whatever the case may be. But Flubber was a human being. He went through things in his life just like anybody else. But he had the courage to overcome those things and turn his life around.
Wow. That's great. Now, was it difficult to write this story about your brother?
No, not at all. The difficulty came when I finished the book, and me being the type of person I wanted to put the book into the hands of some family members and friends who knew Flubber personally, so that they can kind of give me the green light and approve, the
Mm,
story.
okay.
And in the beginning, everybody, wasn't on board to approve the story. because, again, he was a human being. So for me, courageous is my interpretation
Hmm.
of Avon Flubber Johnson. But somebody else who had a different relationship with him may have seen a different person in Flubber.
Absolutely.
So what I always try to get people to understand is, um, to me, he was Avon. My mother named him Avon, Avon Johnson. And me being a young brother who idolized my older brother who was flashy and had money in the slick car and all that, he was Avon. But the people that knew him out in the streets, that knew about how much money he had, who knew he was a drug dealer, who knew he would punch you in your mouth in the middle of Baltimore and Gilmore Street, even if the police officer was standing on the corner, they knew Flubber. But in the middle somewhere is a human being.
Mm,
You got Flubber and you got Avon. But to
right.
me, once I wrote the book, I wanted you to understand that he was really the same person.
Mm, wow. That's that's powerful. That's powerful too. And for you um, to want to do something like that, I think is even more, um, more powerful. Writing about your big brother, and and I know that that had to be special for you, like you said, because this is somebody that you looked up to, somebody that you knew. I don't know how much you knew about the other side of him as far as Flubber, but you knew him. Hey, this is my big brother. This is who I see every day, and I wanted to be able to tell his story, his whole story. And I think by you telling that whole story, like you said, you're able to assist somebody in understanding that, hey, that you can have a story that's told, a redemption of getting to that other side and everything like that, and doing those things and stuff like that. So I think that that's great. um what advice would you give to an aspiring author or writer that says, hey, I think I have a story to tell, but I'm not quite sure if I should write it now? What would your advice be to them?
So I'm kind of mentoring a young man right now, my nephew. He has a story
Okay.
that he wants to put out. And it's the same message that I tell every aspiring writer or author. People come to me all the time and say, how do I get started? How
Right.
do I become an author? It's the same thing for me. I give the same response. Get the story out of your head first. It doesn't matter if you are a great writer or if you make the right punctuations and spell words correctly. Get it out of your head first. Just start writing. Some people like to use a paper and pencil or paper and pen. I prefer to type, and maybe if you never took a typing class and you don't really know how to use the keyboard, just peck. Just hit the letters one at a time and don't worry about you doing it, you know,
Right.
60 words a minute and all that stuff. Just get it out. Don't worry about the mistakes and all that. Get the story out. And it doesn't matter if you start at the end or if you start at the beginning or if you start in the middle. Get the story out. Because what I learned is if you get the story out and you get it to a very good editor, they'll make your story look like you're a brilliant writer, but you got to get the story out first.
Yeah, and that you just made an excellent point, because that's what I tell my clients too. It's not just about it's about the most important thing is getting it out. We'll take care of all of the putting the pieces together, after we get it out. But the main thing is having it on paper, because we can move stuff around. We can figure out if something doesn't work. We can always go back to rewrite something, or talk about things. But to me, that's what the editing process is for. It's for you to figure it out, and to make sure that the story is doing what it's supposed to do. It's saying what it's supposed to say. It's flowing the way that it's supposed to flow, and all of those things. But if you just get it out of your head onto paper, then that's one of the big pieces that you'll have as an author, as a writer, and everything like that, because you'll work everything else from that once it's on the paper for you. Now, how important is it for you, and was it for you, having that team around you, having an author around you, having a graphic designer to tell you what the cover should look like? How was that for you? How important is that to you?
Well, for all of my books, I did my own cover designs.
Okay.
I tell people if you have any vision or any ability to, even use a PowerPoint presentation, do the graphics yourself.
Hmm.
If you got the money, you can afford it, then sure, tell somebody your vision and let a professional graphic designer put it together. But if you're on a shoestring budget and you want to put out an indie book and you don't have the money to really pay somebody to give you something, really nice, then put it together yourself. That's what I did. But I know everybody may not be able to do that. So you got some websites out there like Fiverr where you can
Right,
pay somebody very minimal, $10, $20,
right.
$30, and you give them your vision, and they'll produce something beautiful for you. But for Courageous, I did the cover myself. Um, I just took a photo from a group picture of Flubber and some family and friends, and cropped it. And the reason I chose this picture is because it looks blurry or like it's not clear,
Right,
but
right.
I wanted it to be that way.
Hmm.
Because um, to me it speaks to his persona and the type of person he was.
Hmm.
It's the look in his eyes, and the seriousness on his face that attracted me to this picture. And I felt like, to me, it wasn't, you know, uh, another cover or you know graphic design that I could put that would be better fitting than a picture of his face. So that's why I chose that picture, and I did that myself.
Wow, and that's great. And people, that's a great tip that you gave right there for people to understand that if you're on a shoestring budget, if you can do it, there's some great tools out there. Canva is one, like you mentioned. Fiverr is one that is. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you. You can get a designer on the real cheap on there on Fiverr for them to be able to create a design, and it's done professionally and everything else like that too. So whichever way works best for kind of for you, you should do it. If you're going to do it, you want to make sure that you do it professional, that it's done in a way that it looks professional and that it looks like it has been done and everything like that by a professional. So, and like you
Yeah,
said, the that tool that you talked about, I don't think people realize too with doing covers is PowerPoint. PowerPoint, you can create a cover in PowerPoint and do this
absolutely,
JPEG. It's because I discovered that too, and I was like, oh, okay. I was like, all right.
absolutely,
So you
absolutely,
don't have to just use Publisher. You can actually use PowerPoint as a means to be able to create a great graphic cover for your book
absolutely.
and everything like that.
And this is my book, PR Chronicles. And like
Okay.
I said, it's a three-part series. But every cover for PR Chronicles is different. So what I did, my thought was to use a number of different pictures for this book that represented what the book is about. So it's
Okay.
my family, me being a Marine, me
Hmm.
being a young man in Baltimore. And, I just framed it, with several different pictures. So book two has totally different pictures because the story in book two is different. Book three has totally different pictures because the story is different. But I did all of that myself. I did the back cover myself.
Hmm.
As you can see, I used a different photo for Chronicles than I did for Courageous.
Hmm.
So, I mean, you got to practice and work with it. But,
Right.
um, I got it done. I did it on my own.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So, what's next for you? What are you working on now, and what do you have kind of coming up?
Um, I'm trying to create a web page so I can. I've been pushing some Courageous merch while we were doing the plays. I have a couple of people on my team that I work with. Um, like I said, we did a book. We turned that into a play. I used a local studio called Bright Ideas, black-owned soundstage studio to film the stage play performance. Um, I had, a couple of different people edit, Mr. Titus, Burrell, um, Gerald Haskins, a couple other people helped me edit the project. And now I'm submitting it to various film festivals. I just got notification from the Baltimore Black International Film Festival that Courageous was selected to be in that film festival for this year, which is actually in a couple of weeks.
Oh, cool.
And I submitted to other festivals, the Maryland Film Festival, Tribeca, um, just Sundance, a whole bunch of different film festivals, just to try to get the story out there.
Hmm.
It's a great story about. Have you seen the new film on HBO Max, Charm City King?
No, I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it though.
So I'm trying to follow that blueprint.
Okay.
No sense in creating a wheel,
Right.
recreating a wheel. So Charm City Kings originally was a documentary filmed by a guy named Lofty who came to
Hmm.
Baltimore and filmed what they call the dirt bike boys here in Baltimore.
Right.
The
Right.
12 o'clock boys, bunch of different dirt bike names. And he followed this one young guy around and he put his story into a documentary, just telling everybody what, this dirt bike culture was like.
Hmm.
And he submitted it to film festivals. And eventually it was picked up and it was produced. Obviously, they put a budget behind it and they, changed some things in the script, changed some names. They came to Baltimore, secured some locations in Baltimore and got some actors and brought some people from Baltimore and Chino and a bunch of other people. Meek Mill from Philly, he knows about the great white culture,
Hmm.
and that's how you get the film um, Charm City King. So I'm hoping the same thing happens with Courageous. I filmed it myself. We did a play, filmed it myself, submitted to some film festivals, and hopefully somebody pick it up. I honestly believe the story is big enough that it could be compatible to The Wire. We do it correctly and we get the budget and the cast and the crew and every the production company behind it. I think it could be Flood's story courageous could be as big as The Wire.
Wow. And that's great. And you got me thinking. And what I'll do, and we'll talk a little more about this after we get off of camera, though. But there's a lady, a young lady that does a show as well here in Baltimore, and her partner they own a radio media station. I think it'd be great for you to be on her show because she's well connected too. Her name is Lady J, Charlene Jenkins, but she talks about people that are doing great
Okay.
things in the community and doing some great stuff. And I think it'd be great for you to be on on her show because she's big on talking about Baltimore, the people doing some stories about Baltimore and everything like that. But I think that may also be able to get you another way to be able to get you connected to some people to be able to get that story done that way, like you said, with the Charm City Boys and everything like that. So I'll make sure that I want to connect you with her to have you to introduce you to her, to have you talk to her as well too, because I think that'd be great. I think she'd love her
Definitely, I
kind of
appreciate it.
would love to put your story out there for people to know about, and then like I said, possibly even connect you with some other folks that might be able to do some things too. So um, it's because this is
Cool.
great,
I
and like you
appreciate it.
said, I think your story is a great one, and it's a couple other people that one or two other people that um, that I'll find out from you if you've that you have that put you on a in that promotional era that where you can put on the play, you can have all of those things that are connected to it. But I'll think about once we get off air, we'll talk a little bit more about that. So how can people contact you? How can they connect you to buy the book or buy the series, the books that you already have out as well? But then also have you come in and come to have you virtually speak or once we're able to be able to speak in person and everything too.
Okay. I appreciate the context. Uh, if you're an avid reader and you subscribe to Amazon, available on Amazon. You can get the paperback copy. You can get the ebook version. Some people like to read on their phone or their laptop, so it's available on the Kindle and the Nook. It's available on Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, any online book distributor. You can purchase my book. Um, I self-published through a company called Book Baby. So if you go to bookbaby.com,
Uh-huh.
and you look at it and selection of authors, Corey J. Middle name Jay. You can find me on there for my book profile and all of my books. Um, I'm on social media, Facebook, Corey J. Johnson, Twitter, uh, Corey J31, and Instagram, Corey J31.
Wow. Corey, this has been it's been great talking to you to hear your brother's story, and then how you put together your brother's story. So I appreciate you coming into the author showcase lounge and sitting with us for a little bit to be able to talk about the message that people will gain from reading your book about your brother and everything like that, the importance of writing, the different things that you have coming up. I appreciate you taking out the time, and we look forward to the great things that you have, the great things that you have coming up. And like you said, hopefully we'll see the play Courageous, not just here, but on the HBO screen, on the Netflix screen, all of those great places that we think that the message can be put out there and everything like that. So we appreciate you for your time and coming out and talking to us tonight.
Thank you, Leroy. I appreciate the invitation from you and David for bringing me on. I want to thank the National Black Unity News for featuring me and doing this interview. And I look forward to speaking with you soon.
Absolutely. So we want to thank everybody for tuning in. We what this has been the author showcase with the National Black Unity News newspaper. As I mentioned, you can go to our website www.tnbun.com to subscribe. You can get the latest issue that is out right now with Brother Corey Johnson in their book. Courageous book is in there with his contact information. You can go there, subscribe, make sure you subscribe to the newspaper so that you can get the newspaper on a consistent basis. And then you can check out some of our other authors that are part of the showcase on our YouTube channel under the name The National Black Unity News page on YouTube. You can check out our Facebook page as well, The National Black Unity News, for all of the information that we have that's in the newspaper and then that we have going on as well. As I always say, this is 2020, y'all. We're moving fast and furious with purpose and passion. And as I always tell people, build the impact, because when you build the impact, you change the world. And I'm so elated, so honored to have authors such as Corey Johnson, who are building impact one book at a time, one story at a time, one word at a time. So we'll talk to y'all next time, and we'll see y'all soon.